The recent visit of U.S. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta has revived debate here about whether Israel should or should not attack Iran's nuclear facilities. It's been widely reported that the Americans are asking Israel to hold off on a strike, promising to do the job themselves if diplomacy fails later. But it's unclear if that promise from the U.S. is good enough for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his Defense Minister Ehud Barak. The two Israeli leaders don't believe that sanctions have helped deter Iran one iota from developing nuclear weapons, and it's becoming more and more clear here in Israel that they're getting closer and closer to making a decision. Ephraim HaLevy, a former head of the Mossad, said if he were an Iranian, he'd be very fearful about the next 12 weeks.
That remark was echoed soon after by another heavyweight, Aaron Zevi Farkash, the former Israeli head of military intelligence. He said he believed an Israeli attack could come in the near future in, quote, weeks or a couple of months. Neither HaLevy nor Farkash expressed their support for a unilateral strike on Iran, but they are experienced enough to know that Israel's window of opportunity will span over the next 3 months. Many analysts agree.
I think obviously is a period before the elections in the United States is a period in which Israel has a greater freedom of action because of the American elections. And also at the same time there is a different clock ticking. After all, the talks have failed with the Iranians, and we see them progressing continuously on the nuclear path. So the time passes, and I think Israel will face a difficult choice to make a decision.
To wait on a strike after the U.S. election is seen by some in Israel as a dangerous gamble. There are fears that President Obama will not come through on promises to use American military might to stop Iran if he wins a second term. And there are doubts that if Republican Mitt Romney is elected, he won't be so bold so early in his presidency. After the U.S. election, some security experts here say an Israeli strike will not be very effective. Every day that passes affords Iran a chance to better safeguard its nuclear capabilities against attack, primarily by moving them further and further underground. Danny Yatom is a former director of the Mossad. He believes Iran constitutes an existential threat to the state of Israel, an opinion shared by most Israeli security experts.
And we have to do our utmost to prevent Iran from having a bomb. Mainly, it is the role of the Americans and the community, international community. But if they will not do it, probably we will have to do it.
Yatom has publicly advocated for the U.S. to take the lead in a military strike on Iran. It's no secret the U.S. Army could carry out a more devastating attack on Iran's nuclear facilities than Israel.
I think that if the United States is a superpower and wants to play a positive role in international affairs, it has to act.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu also once hoped for U.S. action now, according to Israel's timetable, but he's reportedly given up on that. Washington has said again and again it wants to give more time for diplomacy to work, and the presidential election in November has only solidified that position. All of which complicates Netanyahu's decision-making process on Iran. He risks alienating the U.S. with a unilateral strike. He also risks starting a war in the region. Some critics say Iran would retaliate by firing missiles on Israeli cities, killing thousands of civilians. But not everyone agrees.
I also think that there is, on the other hand, an exaggeration on part of those that point out to what the Iranians can retaliate. I think their ability to retaliate is much smaller than it's usually referred to.
Critics here say an Israeli strike will only buy 1 year, perhaps 2, before Iran recuperates and gets back to its nuclear ambitions. Not much time at all. But the price of Israeli inaction is also costly. Aside from posing a direct threat to Israel, a nuclear Iran may set off a dangerous arms race in the Middle East. It would likely embolden Iran's proxy terror groups in the area, Hezbollah and Hamas, giving them a nuclear umbrella under which to launch attacks against Israel. Attacks that may become much, much more devastating.
If Iran will have a nuclear capability, they will be able to provide the terrorists what we call a dirty bomb, which is a radiological bomb. And if they will ignite such a bomb in Tel Aviv, it will cause many, many, many casualties.
Netanyahu recently said he has not yet made a final decision about an attack on Iran. It's well known that he faces considerable opposition from top members of the Israeli army and the Mossad, but it's unclear if that will deter him. Jordana Miller, JN1, Jerusalem.